everyone. In March 2009, my life changed. I went from eating when I wanted, and I never considered my health an issue. I learned how important community was at this point and how support from my friends and family was incredibly important. March 2009 is when I decided I was going to live life out loud. In March 2009, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. The day that I found out I was diagnosed, I wasn't really that upset. You see, what I thought I had was my grandmother's diabetes. My grandmother just took a pill and checked her blood sugar every Wednesday, and she had a candy drawer. I was like, I can do this, I can take a pill. Oh, but little did I know that type 1 diabetes isn't just a pill. It isn't even just about medication. Type 1 diabetes is an obstacle in everything that I do, whether that's going to school, working out, dating, eating, stress, the list goes on. Once the news broke that my diabetes meant taking daily injections of insulin, daily blood sugar checks, carb counting, and once again the list goes on, I began to think, this isn't my grandmother's diabetes. Looking back to 2009, it was almost like I knew that diabetes was going to be a blessing in disguise, and we'll get to that later. When I was diagnosed, I was sent to the hospital and I spent 5 days there. The doctor came up to me the one day and said, "Why are you smiling, Kayla? You were just diagnosed with diabetes. That's no reason to smile." Well, I didn't know why I was smiling and seemingly calm. I do know that in that moment, I gave myself an option. I could either dwell on the fact that I was diagnosed with diabetes or use it as motivation to be more, do more, and live more. And that's just what I did. I didn't waste any time. I began blogging 3 days after I was diagnosed, hence why I have an English major. Explaining what I was going through on this blog, 4 injections a day, like I said, 6 finger plus pokes, learning how to carb count, learning what a high blood sugar felt like, what a low blood sugar felt like. I found blogging incredibly therapeutic. And the support from my family and friends was amazing. My involvement began to grow, and I was on the kick of never letting an opportunity pass by. I didn't have a say in whether or not I was diagnosed with diabetes. Much to popular belief, I didn't overindulge in McDonald's or sweets. I was a normal, healthy, minus my retired pancreas, 18-year-old girl who happened to have all the right or wrong genetics for having diabetes. I began entering races, 5Ks, half triathlons, and obstacle courses. Was I good at them? No. But I pushed and I tried and experienced life in a way I had never done before. These things would have been much easier to do without diabetes, but I no longer had that option. I never wanted to let diabetes prevent me from doing what I wanted to do. I was diagnosed only a few short months before going here, Fanshawe College. This meant taking full responsibility of my health in an unpredictable environment. This meant having to explain a disease that I only had for 4 months to 3 roommates that I did not know. It meant taking tests, going to parties, counting cafeteria food, all with diabetes. I could have decided that it was too much, but like the races I entered, often not practicing, I like to wing things, I knew that all I had to do was try. I remembered, like a race, you can always stop, rest, and try again. Fast forward to today, I can safely say that while it wasn't easy, I graduated from both Fanshawe and Western. All this time, I began to get more involved in the diabetes community. I found a group of other people living with diabetes and that were living out loud just like I was. It was all bound to create amazing friendships with my new diet buddies. And my Facebook friend list began to grow of other friends who were lacking a functional pancreas. I started using social media as my platform to spread awareness and also find ways to turn my diagnosis into something positive. I already had my blog, but I started to create other things like a successful page called Type 1 Diabetes Meme Page, which now has 40,000 likes worldwide. I began to realize my passion in life and I felt like an expert. I felt as though I had discovered a whole another world. I then began looking for ways to connect to others living with diabetes around the world and locally. I felt as though my experience could help others that were struggling with diabetes. I was selected by the Canadian Diabetes Association to represent Canada at the World Diabetes Congress. That's another minute. In 2013, I went to Australia for a leadership training and to attend the Congress, and the next month, I will be doing the same thing and going to Vancouver. began to see how I could help locally. I started a support group for teen girls living with diabetes called Type 1 Empowerment. Oh, I skipped ahead too much. This group meets weekly in London, and the group is now going on our 2nd year. It's important to me to express how Type 1 diabetes affects a person's life on a daily basis, and this disease does not discriminate. As you can see here, we both have diabetes. I happened to be diagnosed with diabetes a little bit later in life, but I feel as though it gave me the ability to view it in in a way that was more responsible. I realized that I had to do something, and if there was a reason to be diagnosed, this was the perfect reason. This is how I was going to take on my diabetes. I often say that Type 1 diabetes is the best thing that ever happened to me. And you guys are probably thinking, how could something so awful be the best thing that has ever happened to this poor girl? But the truth is, while it does sometimes wake me up at night, it hurts my fingers, and frankly, I don't like having to take needles. It felt as though it gave me so much. It gave me perspective, and it also gave me purpose. I wouldn't be here today standing in front of you all if it wasn't for my diabetes. It allowed me to see life in a different view, something that I try to pass on to others on a daily basis. I have met so many young children and adults living with Type 1 diabetes that need someone like me. Showing them what is possible with Type 1 diabetes, being a role model, is really important, and I'm sure some of you can think of people that you idolized or used as a role model growing up. And hopefully we can now think of people that look up to us. And that's the type of person that I wanted to be. I wanted to be someone that someone can look up to. I want to stress that while I am cheerful and positive, I do have my moments. Type 1 diabetes is not easy. It can be incredibly frustrating. While it seems simple that sugar can cause high blood sugar, and if you're low, you just take sugar, it's really not that simple. Like I said, lots of things can cause issues within your diabetes. There's no right or wrong way of handling your diabetes, and some people do not cope well. I happen to see it as a blessing, but that is not always the case. But it doesn't mean that that does not get to me. I am human, like you, and trust me, there are days that diabetes gets in the way, and I'm not cheering about it. Deciding to be positive was an option that I chose. I wanted it to open up experience and open arms with a conscious choice. It's easy, while other days I have to physically find ways to remind myself, whether that's talking to other people with diabetes or looking back at what I've accomplished with diabetes. I had to prove that I wasn't always full of sunshine and rainbows, and that I felt pain and sadness, frustration, because of my diabetes. There are and were moments in my life that I asked why. Why was I diagnosed with diabetes? I'm not a bad person. I didn't do anything wrong. I know that there are likely many of you in the crowd that have had that same thought when something goes wrong. Why me? Why is this happening? What did I do wrong? But sometimes we just have to find the good. So, about that mountain, which I'm sure that's why you guys came here. How did I go from smiling on a hospital bed to smiling on the top of Kilimanjaro? This is me. To give you perspective, I am not athletic, as you can see. I know I said I did races, but really I kind of sucked. In the half triathlon, I actually, during the swimming portion, swam into the rescue boat and somehow de-changed my bike gear, and I don't even know if that's a technical bike term. I was almost dead last at the finish line and beat by people that were 3 times my age. So the fact that I climbed a mountain, let alone one of the 7 summits, is a true testament how a positive mind can move mountains, or in my case, climb them. It all started with my pen pal. Yes, I have an actual handwritten pen pal. She asked me if I'd consider climbing Kilimanjaro. And she asked me this by email, by the way. She didn't send it in a letter. At first I thought, no way. I was eating chips, I was watching TV, and someone casually asked me to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, which is Africa's highest mountain. So of course, naturally, I began Googling, and the pictures scared me. So as you can see, here's some pictures there. But I was thinking about how this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. It's not every day that your pen pal asks you to climb a mountain. Unless there is some people here, maybe. I decided to do it. I immediately did a couple sit-ups just to get ready. My pen pal Crystal was from Barbados, and she was equally scared and not athletic. So I felt confident that I wasn't the only one who was not athletic. Crystal also had diabetes. In fact, it would be a team of type 1 diabetics, and many countries would be represented. And they were looking for a Canadian, and they chose me. It sounds super crazy. My pen pal asked me to climb a mountain. I email an organization and they say, yep, you're on the team. But it literally happened that way. I had 6 months to prepare and I decided that I probably shouldn't wing it. So the organization was looking for athletic, fit people living with type 1 diabetes. I didn't send them that picture. Okay, I may have said that I was sporty to them. They were going to film it and it would be a documentary to raise awareness and inspire others living with diabetes. And I just have a little clip from it to share.
Kilimanjaro was one of my dreams, and I decided to do it with other type 1 diabetic people from all around the world.
Type 1 diabetes is basically where your pancreas stops producing insulin. You usually get it when you're a child or a young adult. For me, apart from making it to the summit, the most exciting thing is spending time with other people with type 1 diabetes who all share similar difficulties and challenges.
As a rock climber, I found that my diabetes can be well managed. It doesn't have to stop you from doing anything that you want to do, no matter how extreme it seems.
When we are doing what we really like, we really love, you can inspire other people to do the same.
Feeling a bit nervous about going into the unknown and what's around that gate, and maybe have my blood sugars going low.
It's a challenge, and any challenge, if you embrace it, can actually improve your life.
The Kilimanjaro expedition is part of the World Diabetes Tour Association, and we are all here together so as to inspire other type 1 diabetic people from all around the world.
Allá en la montaña.
There's a lot of challenging factors being up here at altitude. The air is really thin. It's also quite dry.
The blood sugar changes that happen with diabetes, drops and rises, cause all kinds of crazy symptoms for people. And we're realizing now that altitude causes all kinds of crazy symptoms, and in many cases they're very, very similar.
Altitude sickness is very challenging, and it's also really common up here. The best way to deal with it is just to make sure that you have your diabetes under control and that you're getting lots of water and getting good rest. The key is having self-awareness, really knowing your body, really having good control of your diabetes helps you to climb better.
I think the most challenging thing is trying to stay healthy, whether it's from the food or the altitude, getting headaches, feeling nauseous.
Challenge. It's all about challenge. Challenge with the athletics, challenge with the diabetes. It's a superb challenge.
I think the idea that there's still 5 more days of this, like psychologically, is a lot harder than just the physical act of what needs to happen.
So in total, the group is doing phenomenally well. There's a lot of team spirit, a lot of conversation about symptoms, a lot of support around diabetes.
If type 1 diabetes is not properly controlled, there's a lot of damage to internal organs that happens. This is an ongoing battle. It's almost like climbing a mountain that doesn't really have a summit. Like, there are high points, but you always know that there's always going to be another low point where you're going to have to, continue to struggle. And that's one of the things about this experience that's so amazing, is that we're all dealing with these same risk factors together.
day has been spectacular, and I'm very excited to attempt the summit.
We're waiting for dinner in 30 minutes, then have a rest, like a few hours, and begin the climb. I'm very proud of the team. No big hyperglycemia, no big hypoglycemia. We managed everything, and it was very hard because cold, very cold condition, and very hard climb, but we did it. So it's amazing, it's great.
We reached the summit of Kilimanjaro, and with this we will inspire a lot of people around the world.
You know, we all have an opportunity to try and to embrace struggle, and that's really what climbing is about, and that's what living successfully with diabetes is about.
So that's part of a bigger documentary, so if you are interested, if you type in Kilimanjaro diabetes, it will pop up on YouTube. I do have more parts in the bigger documentary, but I was the one in the hot pink jacket, of course. So in the next 6 months, I began training, mainly a lot of walking around London. I started collecting gear that was foreign to me. Just want to say I feel bad for the people at Mountain Equipment. Well, this time I really wasn't worried about my diabetes. I was more scared of the adventure as a whole. It was as if all these little life tests were to prepare me for this moment of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I knew this challenge was more than a physical challenge. In August 2013, my mom and my grandpa dropped me off at Pearson Airport with my duffel bag. My grandpa's one of my #1 supporters, and he insisted on walking me as far as the guards would let him. He can't walk very well, so this showed me that he was really supporting my decision. He knew me as a creative, quiet kid, not a mountain climber. The doctors were Canadian, as you could see in the video there, so I felt safe knowing that the doctors were there. Not only because of the doctors being Canadian, but because I felt like I had a little piece of home with me the entire time. I was confident about my diabetes management. I knew that it would pose some obstacles along the way. I knew that there was bound to be highs and lows and possible errors with my equipment due to altitude. I also was worried about having to carry all my diabetes supplies and make sure the insulin stayed cool but did not freeze. I was now wearing an insulin pump as well as a continuous glucose monitor, which checks my blood sugar every 5 minutes for me. So I felt prepared in knowing that climbing the mountain would be slightly easier with these new technologies. I was actually more terrified to go to Africa. I couldn't picture it in my head. I was also scared of having to take medication like malaria medication, and if anyone's ever had to take malaria medication, they know what I'm talking about. I was also scared to camp. I should mention, Kilimanjaro was my first camping trip. I had never camped in a tent before in my life. Was I sheltered? Maybe. I just really like hotels, okay? I had many moments of doubts prior to getting on the plane. During it all, I couldn't imagine it, and it bothered me that I couldn't. There are so many things in life that we can't imagine, and I think that's what scares us the most. Just like my diagnosis, I had no control over these thoughts, but I was given a choice to pick whether or not I was going to let it, once again, dwell or let it motivate me. I had my first and only panic attack prior to leaving for Kilimanjaro. I felt that I had bit off more than I could chew. I imagined not being able to breathe or the fear of failing. I knew that climbing Kilimanjaro meant so much more than a personal success. It meant proving that a person with a chronic illness can do whatever they aspire to do. It meant that a challenge faced with a positive mind is much easier done. It was a matter of remaining positive. Diabetes was my mountain. It was time to physically climb it. Being surrounded by people like you is an amazing feeling. Usually I'm the only one with type 1 diabetes in a room, although in this crowd there might be another. This is something that knowing other people around you are like you is a comforting feeling. You know that if you're having an issue, you can talk to them and they will understand fully. The trek took 5 days up and 2 days down. I was allowed a day bag and a duffel bag, and our tents would already be set up. Thank God, because I don't think Crystal and I would have been able to set up a tent. I had all of my diabetes supplies packed in my day bag, and I had enough supplies for 3 times the amount of time I'd be in Africa. I wanted to feel prepared and know that if anything were to happen, I've had at least 3 times worth of supplies. I was often put first in line, so you can see the hot pink jacket there. I was a stylish mountain climber. I was often put in first in line for the hike because I had the shortest legs. I was capable, but I was slower because I have short legs. We were all there to prove a point. Each day the air got thinner, it became slower, random fits of laughter and exhaustion hit us, but diabetes was dying to challenge us. We supported one another and pushed each other up that mountain. For the most part of my diabetes didn't rear its head at me. There was only one day when I had a 3-hour low blood sugar. We couldn't stop every time someone had a low blood sugar because they were on a tight schedule. We were walking 8 to 9 hours a day, so to stop we would lose our light, so we had to keep going. Often, normally, when you have a low blood sugar, you'd want to sit down and eat. You get really emotional and sweaty and hungry. And instead, because I couldn't sit down and eat, I had to hike and eat and hike and eat. This particular day, we had to climb up and down a steep valley. That moment I wanted to quit. I started crying, and I really didn't stop crying. I cried so much. I could see our tents in the distance, but I couldn't muster up the energy to keep going. And the thing about Kilimanjaro is that the guides often tell you we are only an hour away, and they lie. So if you do it, don't believe them. They always just say an hour away, and then an hour passes, and an hour away. So they lie. So I could see them, and they were like, it's only an hour away, but I knew it wasn't really an hour away. So people were encouraging me, just make it to the tents. I'll take your day bag, keep going. I questioned my ability to do this. Why was I climbing a mountain? My diabetes was taking my energy, it was taking my motivation, and it was possibly taking away this opportunity. Post Kilimanjaro, my teammates told me that they saw my positivity come out that night. They truly thought that I was not going to make it. They thought that I was going to give up. But the truth is, I was a little bit terrified of where they take you when you give up, because your team continues, and then I was like, where do I go after that? So that's part of the reason why I didn't give up, and a positive attitude. So I was faced with a challenge. Do I dwell or do I keep going? Of course I kept going. And I think we all have those moments of contemplation where giving up is an easy option. And how many times have we set goals, like weight loss goals, for instance, to drop them a couple weeks later? I had worked really hard to get to this point, and reaching the summit of Kilimanjaro was my goal. So what kept me going? Like I said, the air is thin on Kilimanjaro. The mountain is over 19,000 feet tall, and the oxygen levels can make daily chores a hassle. Things like thinking can be really difficult. I tried to pull energy from people at home. Because of the time difference, I knew that my cheering crowd was sleeping often when I was hiking. So I thought about taking their energy while they were sleeping and pulling through one step at a time. The other thing that pulled me through was remembering what this journey meant. It meant being able to come home and inspire other people that were struggling or felt like they couldn't achieve anything. I wasn't doing this for myself. This wasn't on my bucket list. I was climbing a mountain to make a point. I was a non-camping, unathletic female with type 1 diabetes. I wanted to come back saying, look what I did. Despite all of the obstacles and challenges, look what I did. On the 5th day, we made the trek to the summit at midnight. It was long and it was a cold night, and it truly tested my patience and strength. We walked slow and we followed one another closely. Eventually the team would split into 2, as some were feeling violently ill, Crystal being one of them. I was one of the first groups to reach Kilimanjaro, the summit of Kilimanjaro. We had 2 mates not make it because of illness, which was not diabetes related. I had never pushed myself so hard in my life, and still to this day, I've never pushed myself so hard. I was proud of myself and I was proud of my team. The expression "on top of the world" must have come from a mountain climber. What an amazing feeling it is to be on top of the world. It gives you perspective, and it's such an emotional feeling knowing what we can do with our minds and our bodies. I recently saw the movie Everest. I don't know if anyone's seen that movie. And while Kilimanjaro is not as tall or snowy, I felt the memories of Kilimanjaro flooding back. But one part really got to me. One of the reporters in the movies asked one of the climbers, why? Why climb a mountain? It's not safe, it's not necessary, it's not something that has to be done, so why do people climb mountains? The man's response was simple. It was because I can. And just think about that, because I can. It's such a simple answer, but when we set goals and we make accomplishments and we strive for greatness and we do it just because we can, I think it's an amazing thing to go by. When we decide we can, there really is no mountain high enough. Like I said, climbing Kilimanjaro without diabetes would have been so much easier, but my diagnosis made me realize that I can. It's kind of sad in a way that oftentimes people have to be faced with something dramatic in order to make a change. It's like we have to experience the fragility in life to know that we have to do something. Think of people like Terry Fox, who despite his setbacks accomplished something amazing. Why does it take an obstacle for us to realize this and to kickstart to do great things? Why can't we just do great things? I wish I realized this before diabetes, and luckily diabetes is manageable, and often people with type 1 diabetes can live an uncomplicated life. Since finishing the climb in 2013, I've used the mountain as experience and motivation to persevere. There are many moments in my life that I feel like giving up or that I can't do something. I put myself back into my hiking boots, and I remember the moments that I was on Kilimanjaro. Maybe you've been in a similar situation before. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing about the experience. I've had both children and adults living with type 1 diabetes come up to me and tell me how I've inspired them to do more, to try new things, and to live out loud. That was my point, and I did it. It truly doesn't have to be a mountain. It can be any dream or goal, big or small. But remember that you can choose to dwell on something, or you can choose to be positive about it and live out loud. A positive mind can climb mountains. I asked others that were living with type 1 diabetes what motivates them to do great things, and these are some of the responses that I got. I do great things because of my brother who also lives with type 1 diabetes. Despite my diabetes, I refuse to be less than the person I was before. For my own health and to inspire others living with diabetes. I have more motivation now with diabetes to live my fullest. I have been on so many great adventures. I will not be chained down. I will beat every obstacle that comes my way. I am sure a lot of you have been through obstacles in your life. I am curious if anyone wants to share what motivates them despite obstacles, despite pain or discouragement. Yeah?
Yes, for me it's my family. As they've been so instrumental as keeping me on track and been so involved in my life at this point. And if it weren't for my mom, dad, and brother, I would not be sitting here watching you.
Yes.
So thank you very
That's
much.
awesome. Oh, that's awesome. And I would like to add to that my family was also a driving force in me feeling comfortable enough to go outside of my comfort zone and try things like that. I feel as though if I didn't have the support from my family, I wouldn't be here today as well. Is there anyone else like to share? Yeah?
I guess the biggest obstacle for me was coming to this school because no one before me, like in my family, has actually gone to post-secondary college. And it's actually really scary for me to even come here and attend the school. I never thought I'd actually get this opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing that you came. I think there's... Did you have something to add?
I think what inspires people is facing the fears and makes them stronger.
For sure, I agree. And I think it's more so the point of leading up to that fear and not knowing what to expect. And kind of like I mentioned, when we can't picture something, it scares us, because usually we go to work and we know the routine of work, and that's easy, and that's why it doesn't scare us. But when something's unpredictable, it's harder to imagine it, and it's harder to go forward. And for me, Kilimanjaro, being a non-camper, like, it wasn't even the fact I was climbing a mountain, I had to imagine sleeping in a tent. So it's like, everything was brand new to me, right? I went in there and I didn't know how it was going to be. I couldn't picture any of it. And really, part of my training should have been camping, really. But I wanted to say my first time camping was on Kilimanjaro, so I held to it. Is there anything anyone else wants to add? So I want to thank Fanshawe College for having me here today. I'm honored to be a part of the amazing social science speaker program. And I open to any questions that people have regarding the climb or my diabetes or anything like that. Yeah?
This is going to be a silly question, but how exactly did they protect your insulin? Because I was going to ask about refrigeration, but it also can't freeze?
Yes, so insulin has to be refrigerated, but also if you have it open already, it can last outside of the refrigeration for 30 days. So the insulin I carried was okay to be out. The only issue is that during the day of Kilimanjaro, it's fairly warm, and because you're having it on you, in your backpack, it can get fairly warm. I did use a special case that kept it kind of cool, kind of like an ice pack type thing. But the other thing was at night was when it got cool. So what we would all do actually is sleep with our insulin. So in our sleeping bag, we would just put all of our supplies. That's also where we would put like our cameras and stuff like that, so that we could make sure everything was warm.
Worst teddy bear ever.
Yeah, exactly. We'd always have just a big, the bottom of our sleeping bag was just full of junk, really. Thank God I'm short, because I didn't even feel it. So that's kind of where we kept everything. Insulin also does come in vials, which is glass, obviously. So we just had to be a little careful where we were setting our bags and stuff like that. We were all carrying insulin. Some of us were on insulin pumps, some of us were taking syringes and stuff, so we had lots of different supplies. And if something were to ever happen, we did have the doctors there that had backup stuff. Good question. Is there any other questions? Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yes, my professor mentions the famous philosophical dictum, love your faith. So, with respect to your type 1 diabetes?
To love my fate?
Yes. How do you see that working? Like, and how do you come to accept that yes, this is who I am, and there's no way to get through this other than stay positive?
So for me, before diabetes, I was a pretty average person. I didn't really have any specific hobbies or things that I liked creative writing, but there wasn't anything that I knew lots about. So there's people who know lots about sports teams or know lots about bugs or something. I don't understand that. But for me, I didn't really have anything like that. And so being diagnosed with diabetes kind of gave me that expertise, that moment where I could really know something about something. So I feel like that helped me because it gave me kind of an identity that I was looking for. I was 18 when I was diagnosed, so I was kind of in those teenage years. But the other thing was, I just realized that a positive mind can really do a lot. And I don't know if that's the way I raised. My mom's a fairly positive person, so I don't know if that's where that came from. But I mean, there was two options. I could just take insulin every day, check my blood sugar, and be done with it. But I realized there was a whole world of people living with type 1 diabetes that were doing amazing things, and that I could be like them and I could make a change. And I love doing it. It's totally my passion. I spend most of my time talking about diabetes. I work as a nanny to a little girl with diabetes. I surround myself with diabetes. But like I said before too, I do have my moments where I'm not excited about diabetes. But I do accept that I have diabetes, and I think that's important. And I try to do as much as I can while living with diabetes. Yeah?
What achievement you wish to acquire now that you can?
Pardon?
What other achievement you wish to acquire now that you can?
So many people ask if I'm going to climb any more mountains, and I'm not sure about that. Right now, I enjoy traveling, and so I travel as much as I can. I won't turn down another opportunity. There's no one opportunity that has been asked of me that I have turned down. I'm open to trying new things, and while I don't have anything quite set, I'm trying to get as involved as I can. And so with the support group that I run, inspiring those teens, and that's kind of my mission at this point, is to do as much as I can to prove to others what I can do. So I don't have anything infinite, but I'm sure something will come up. Yeah?
Do you work a lot with individuals who find it difficult to stay positive and they need a lot of support?
Yes, so that's kind of why I chose to work with teen girls with diabetes. That's kind of a population that gets missed for a lot of things, especially doctors who don't feel comfortable talking about it. There's a lot of issues with diabetes beyond taking insulin, and so that's kind of why I chose that. I work alongside a lot of like JDRF and Canadian Diabetes Association, and they pass on a lot of names to me. I do find there are so many people struggling, and the issue is that as much as I can give them, they don't always come to me. But I hope in the hindsight, with having my blog and things available where it doesn't have to be person in person, that's what I strive for, reaching those people that really need the inspiration and need the help. Is there any other questions? Yeah, this. Oh. Okay.
Well, you spoke to the genetics of diabetes.
Yeah.
And you spoke a little bit to the culture of diabetes. And how about the psychology, or even from a global perspective? Are there certain cultures or countries where the citizens are more at risk for developing diabetes than in the past, or than other countries?
So there's a lot of studies done. A lot of studies revolve around type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes is where your pancreas is still producing insulin, versus type 1 diabetes, your pancreas is completely retired and is not producing any insulin. And so there are more studies from a type 2 perspective, so I don't know like exactly what countries, but on that point, because I attend World Congress for Diabetes under a Young Leader program, there's 70 different countries represented. And so you really get a feel of how people deal with diabetes in different countries. The access to insulin is a huge thing, and access to meters and stuff like that. So it's really eye-opening. There is a lot of struggle with dealing with diabetes in different countries. And frankly, I'm happy that I live in Canada and have access to insulin and an insulin pump and meter, and but there's definitely a struggle around the world. My experience with diabetes isn't the same as someone living in Africa or Australia. Everyone has different experiences with diabetes. Question? Did you have
based on your personal experience and perspective, what do you think we can adapt in our lives that will help us?
Based on, yeah. So what message I kind of want to send home with you guys is to not wait. So to start doing those amazing things that you want to do, or think of amazing things. Sometimes we get so busy that we don't really think about what we want to do. And I don't want people have to be faced with such an obstacle or a disease like diabetes in order to make that change. I want you guys to go home and think of, okay, what do I really want to accomplish it, and how can I accomplish it now? And it doesn't have to be something huge, it doesn't have to be climbing a mountain, but there's so many things that we have kind of on our list set aside that we don't get to, and then last minute when we realize, oh my gosh, you know, this happened and I don't know what to do now, that's when we start doing. So that's kind of my take-home message, and I hope at least one person in here is inspired to do the same.
On behalf of the Social Science Speaker Series, I'd like to thank you so much for coming today and sharing your story. It was funny and inspirational and engaging, and I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. I was going to ask you for a round of applause. I've already given it, but how about another one? I want to thank you all for coming, and also mention that we will have a third speaker this semester for our Social Science Speaker Series, another Fanshawe grad named John Kent, who will be speaking about bullying and standing up to bullying on November 19th. So thanks again for coming, and I hope to see you then.
Thanks for coming.
Universities where they have 2 hours.
Yes. I know. You can be the one.
I took so for now. That's fine. In here, but it's later, and it was so cool as you look out, you just see clouds and mist when you look at the ground, you'd see some trees and other mountain tops all covered in snow, and first I got my own house on top of the world. Literally, it's so funny because and they had this tiny little chunky snow that they had, strategically put around the country. Where the platform isn't quite the summit, there's about a 15-minute walk to the actual summit. So, Cameron has an hour all the summit. I think it was like sheer I was having way too much fun just
Did it even get started? Did it even go? How do I stop it? Oh my goodness. Oh man.